I'm going to describe a lithium company for you that had unusual activity 2 days ago. And you know what happened? Stock popped big right now.
Episode 283, Mark.
Unbelievable.
Another
we
proud
got to pop
day.
champagne at 300, John. 300 corks will fly.
Well, we might have to have champagne that day. Remember to write that down, Jared. Instead of his cork screw, the boring thing, he'll have to have champagne popping sounds and things.
I love gold.
Yeah, he loves gold.
Wow, that's a new one.
Yeah, well, he's used it before. He's had a few of those. Folks, that is Marc LoPresti. Over there, that's Marc LoPresti. I'm Jon Najarian. Jared is handling the graphics, the clocks, the dancing bulls. I guess these days the bulls are the ones doing all the dancing, Mark.
Yep.
And we'll talk about some of that. There's the bear, but all of a sudden the bull, you know what they say, Mark, you mess with the bull, you get the horns.
That's right. Oh, wait, that's actually, I shouldn't do that. I think that's actually like a nasty gesture in some countries. It doesn't work internationally. So, yeah.
All right. Well, for all of you watching and viewing in foreign countries, send the hate to Marc LoPresti. That's MX LoPresti.
Yeah, cards and letters. Keep them coming.
That's right. Well, thank you for joining us today, folks. We're going to dive right in with the Macro Minute today, as we always do. And Macro Minute today, Mark, I'm going to say is the producer prices sliding about 0.5% in October. Biggest drop since 2020.
Yeah. Yep. Fantastic. And on the heels, of course, of Tuesday's CPI report that came in 10 basis points lower than expected, 0.2 versus 0.3. And, of course, disaster averted, or at least delayed, because you know our government will figure out a way to create another disaster. But no government shutdown bill passed. I guess they got the message from Moody's earlier in the week, and that's something that we've talked about on the show quite a bit before. So, yeah, all signs pointing to relatively calm sailing. Mm-hmm. As far as interest rates are concerned, J-Powell maybe no reason, less of a reason to give us another hike before we gather around the Christmas tree or whatever your choice of celebration is at the end of the year. And markets lapping it up. That's why those bulls are in charge handily this week, no doubt.
That's right. And by the way, folks, Mark celebrates Festivus,
yes,
as most New Yorkers do.
Yes. Yeah, the airing of grievances is my favorite part of that holiday.
That's right. Not the wrestling part. I thought maybe the wrestling.
Sure.
Giddy up.
Let's talk now. Fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Always got to make sure you have your volume up for that.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Burry. He apparently was buying an awful lot of index calls and or closing out his puts at the same time, Mark, because he was closing out his short bets against the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. I'm not a Michael Burry hater, folks, but I will say that the reporters that covered this have done a horrible job because they constantly mix up what exactly an option is, because that's what he bought, put options. He defined his risk, which Mark and I always say, that's something every investor should do. Define your risk. With options, you can do that. And you do control a levered bet. And unfortunately, Mark, they always conflate the 20,000 options, perhaps, that he might have bought with $1 billion in short position when it controls that much, but it's not $1 billion investment. And
right.
So when they calculate, oh, well, the market only went down by 3%, but 3% on $1 billion is a big number, because it is. He didn't have $1 billion in the market, folks. So I think that Michael, you made a great trade, but the market didn't cooperate. You're lucky you got out of it alive.
Yep. Anybody betting against the market in the past couple of weeks has definitely had their you-know-what handed to them. So not totally surprised to see Mr. Burry clear out his shorts. But that's a great indication of where a lot of smart money thinks the rest of the year is going to go, John. I think that we're going to be fairly pleasantly surprised.
Well, and I know now we get to dive in, Mark, to our stocks, which even though I kind of see that Jared is teasing me with the Kittle video already, I intended to sort of use it for the sports side, but let's use it now because it could be a good thing for Starbucks going forward, Mark, because Mr. Kittle was finding that he did much better when he had the pumpkin loaf, and so did his
in
teammates.
2021 season. We had like a bad couple games in a row, and my dad for a Seattle game gave me like a pumpkin loaf from Starbucks. I ate one, and I sit down next to like Juice and I think Jimmy. I was like, "Hey, you guys want one?" They're like, "Yeah, sure. I like pumpkin loaf." And so like take a bite. And that game, I don't think we won it, but I had like 180 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Jimmy got a half roll left, throw middle. Caught by George Kittle.
The first touchdown, Juice just screamed in my face like, "Pumpkin loaf!
Stop.
Pumpkin loaf!" Screamed in my face, pumpkin loaf.
And Jimmy asked him, he goes, what the hell did you eat today?
What
Or
do you
something.
mean? It's the pumpkin loaf? I'm like, it's the pumpkin
That's
loaf.
amazing.
And so then the next week, Jimmy or Juice like, "You got the pumpkin loaf again?" So like now my dad's like, "I'll have the pumpkin loaf, I swear." This time he gives me
I'll
like 5
bring the
loaves.
pumpkin
4
loaf.
guys eat it. We go into Cincinnati. I have like 106 yards and a touchdown.
Caught by George Kittle.
Oh my goodness.
And everyone just screaming pumpkin loaf in my
Oh
face.
my God.
It's one of the great things, Mark. From now on, when we have a big winner, we're going to call it a pumpkin loaf.
I think Starbucks owes us some ad dollars for that, John.
Probably.
You'll forgive me. I am not a big pumpkin loaf guy. I don't want to be the contrarian here today. But I'm also not a big Starbucks fan in general. But
No, it always tastes burned to me. I'm not a big Starbucks fan either. The only time I really drink it, Mark, is A, if there's nothing else, or B, I might grab a latte or something like that, because then I don't taste the burn of those beans because they taste burned to me. All right, here we've got a pumpkin loaf for you, folks. We've got a pumpkin loaf in Sigma lithium, because take a look at this. This is what we saw just days ago, and the stock was, $20. Today, the stock trades to almost $28, and in anybody's book, that's a big winner, Mark. Sigma Lithium reported Q3 revenue, $97 million. That's above what expectations were, and bang, stock ran to the upside.
Yeah, unbelievable. Lithium's been in the headlines a lot this week, John, and I think some of that momentum for this company may also come from the news that, of course, came out from ExxonMobil just, I think, on Tuesday, talking about expanding into and getting into lithium mining operations because of the anticipated short-term and long-term demand for this critical mineral as it relates not only to the EV world, but the electrification or the greening of the grid. We need lithium for all of that stuff for energy storage. So great story. And we had unusual in this name, right, John? I think twice.
Yep, we did, and it paid off bigly. So we're happy campers about that. Now let's talk about Target, which is a stock, Mark, that, of course, Pete touts a lot. But Pete also cited, when they had some bruises, they were bruised up pretty good in the transgender community, as well as in some states where they didn't appreciate so much of the rainbow colored stuff right in the front of the store. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that it did make an impact, that and theft, which account for about $500 million, according to recent surveys of people that assess what the damages are when, the Target gets raided by a bunch of thugs. Well, this is kind of the opposite of that, because Target, despite the fact that they didn't put up outstanding numbers, the numbers, customer purchases were actually down, Mark, but they beat street estimates handily, and the stock zoomed to the upside.
Yeah, they did, John, and where they showed strength, and we've seen this pattern similarly with Walmart, is in their grab and go and their food and groceries categories, as well as the lower price beauty. I still believe, notwithstanding the continued remarkable resilience of the American consumer, that's part of that trade down. Stuff tends to be cheaper at Target, tends to be cheaper at Walmart than maybe in many instances your local grocery or your local beauty shop. I think that's a big part of why a Target performed the way it did. And I'm a bit of a Target perma bull myself, maybe as much as Pete, but there's a lot of good fundamental reasons to like that stock.
Yep, I agree. And again, tip of the hat to Brian Cornell, the CEO over there, who happens to be a friend of Pete's. All right.
Oh, yeah.
How about Energizer, Mark? ENR. It was down 4%, then 6%. Now it's pushing towards a 9% decline. They got multiple downgrades. They got downgrades today from RBC, took them from sector perform, from outperform, and they got a couple other downgrades. But this was something that I didn't really see coming, especially ahead of Christmas when everybody's buying batteries for those toys, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the other side of the lithium story, right? You think about the traditional Energizer batteries, and yeah, this is a time of year that folks are normally stocking up. I suspect, John, that more and more and more of these toys that we'd normally be jamming AAA and AA batteries into are now have USB charging, so that could have something to do with it. This one also did catch me by surprise, to be candid. But I think, taking a little bit of what we anticipate for the Christmas retail story to be, I think it's not going to be as bad as at least I had previously expected. So this one did come as a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah. And to your point, Mark, we do certainly see an awful lot of those toys with the plug-in lithium battery. So that you're not buying as many of the old line Energizer batteries. Maybe they got to get a new version of that Energizer bunny.
I was going to say, we got to bring the bunny back. Where's
right.
Jared? Do we have a bunny graphic or no? Not a Playboy bunny, just a regular. Anyway, next stop.
No, don't get Jared going on that. All right, let's take a look at VFC. Now, Mark, I was on last week with Liz Clayman, and when I was on that show, we were talking. Another Thomas Hayes was his name. He's a hedge fund manager, smart guy, and kudos to you, Thomas, because he was saying this is one of those beat up names that I really like, VF Corp. He said they're replacing some of the people that used to lead various divisions like Vans. I remember he cited in particular, Mark, but this is Timberland, North Face, Icebreaker, Kipling, JanSport, Dickies, all those different names under one roof. And JP Morgan even liked him today, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Listen, I don't know, maybe this is a cold weather story. It's certainly getting cold up here in the Northeast. They own, a full complement of iconic brands that have very strong followings, and that continued consumer resilience, the willingness to pay up, for those down jackets and things that they make. We'll see. Maybe another indication that soft landing, that continued retail consumer strength will continue into 24. That's certainly an indication to me.
Yeah, well, just like Jared's saying there, a turnaround on the horizon. In some of these cases, I think we're going to see stocks that were thrown out, maybe with the bathwater, like the solar stocks, like the real estate brokerage stocks, and some of those mortgage stocks. They're making big comebacks, Mark. So we're going to keep our eye on that stuff, folks. All right. Now, Mark, we get to go into Pete's Red Zone. And Pete is actually at a pro football team right now that I can't mention. It's a secret. But I have to ask you, are the Cleveland Browns done? Because they made a fabulous showing fighting their way back against the odds all year. They've got this great defense, but Deshaun Watson is going to miss the rest of the season after he suffered a shoulder injury in the first quarter of their game against the Ravens, a game that they came back and did extraordinarily well in. But sadly, Deshaun lost for the season. What do you think? Are they done, Mark?
I don't think they're done. This obviously a terrible blow to their prospects for the rest of the season. I don't know that they're feeling necessarily as badly as the Giants after getting absolutely annihilated on Sunday. I thought that was a basketball score at one point in the game. But it seems to me, I don't know, John, there are a lot of injuries, even early in the season injuries this year to some really, really key players. It actually sort of makes me think about the relevance of, the second string guys and why it's so important to not just focus on those brand names, those top tick guys, because they can and will get hurt. It's just a matter of when. But I would not count. I'm not a big Browns fan, but I would not count them out just yet.
No, with that great defense and the decent showing that they had with their replacement, and some great running backs, quite frankly, I think they've still got a shot, but it certainly would have been better with Deshaun. So we'll see how it plays out from here, Mark. All right. How about this one? Georgia. They finally take over from Ohio State, the #1 ranking in college football. And they do it because they just throttled Ole Miss. I mean, Lane Kiffin, the head coach of Ole Miss, he was not happy. I don't think any Mississippi fans were happy, but I guarantee a lot of Bulldog fans were pretty darn happy, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely true, John. Absolutely true. I am, I got to spend a little more time on the college side of things for sure. But, when you're in the middle and the thick of the pro football season, it's kind of hard.
Yeah. And you know what? Ole Miss isn't Michigan State. So that's what worked for Georgia, and I think worked against Ohio State. Yeah, they beat up a Michigan State team, but that team is horrible this year. Meanwhile, Ole Miss has done very well this year. So when you compare, granted, you got to play the guys that are on your schedule, but when you compare how they did, Georgia, that is, against Mississippi versus the Ohio State throttling a really bad Michigan State team, I can see how they could edge above them in the polls, and it's probably a good thing that they did. But it's going to be interesting to now that we're getting down to the short strokes, as they say, we're getting down to where the games really, really count. And we've got some playoffs coming the first week in December, Mark, for various conference championships. And I know Pete's focused on that, and you and I will be watching them and enjoying the games, and Pete will be doing strategy.
Yeah, I think we got the Heisman's coming up too, John, don't we?
Oh, are you going to be going again this year? I saw your pictures from last year.
Did they pop up in your phone?
Yeah, they did.
With a little heart emoji? Okay.
I'm gonna find out when it is this year, and I'm going to call Kristen. Hey, Kristen Kaliga, can I get a seat for the Heisman Awards? That's one of the toughest tickets to get, folks. And Mark was there with his daughter and my daughter last year, but not me. They left me out.
We might have to fix that, John. It was really an absolutely incredible event. A shout out to the great, iconic Heisman winner and one of the best QBs in the history of the game, our mutual friend Doug Flutie, for helping to make that happen. But I'll text Doug and see. I'm sure we could wrangle a ticket for one of the Najarian brothers. It just might be Pete.
That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. Well, Mark, great job as usual. Jared, spectacular. Folks, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about trading, make sure you go to marketrebellion.com/get started. That's marketrebellion.com/get started. You can see all of our offerings, and we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.